My name is Amber, 35 years old, and I spent 8 years in uniform sacrificing my youth to protect the man I loved, Alexander, my husband, a powerful senator. I thought his funeral would be the moment I could finally stand beside his casket with our children, recognized at last as a wife, as a mother. But the scent of lilies hadn't yet masked the smell of fresh wood from the coffin when Lady Otero, my sworn enemy, stormed forward before hundreds of cameras, her voice slicing through the silence like a blade. A worthless ghost, unfit to raise children. The entire hall held its breath. Then a hand landed on my shoulder. My mother-in-law, the woman who had hated me for years. She stepped forward and slapped Otero so hard the sound echoed off the marble walls. Never underestimate a mother. Applause erupted, and I understood. This time, my war would burn down everyone who tried to erase my name from this world. I grew up knowing what it meant to be invisible. My mother left when I was 4, and my father, if you could call him that, spent more time at the bottom of a whiskey bottle than he ever did looking me in the eye. I was raised in a series of foster homes where love was rationed like wartime bread, and by the time I turned 18, I had learned one unshakable truth. The world doesn't owe you anything. You have to take it, or you'll be forgotten. The foster system taught me that survival meant being quiet, being useful, being forgettable. I moved through 7 different homes in 14 years. Some families were kind but distant, treating me like a temporary guest who overstayed her welcome. Others were cruel in ways that left scars you couldn't see. I learned to sleep with one eye open, to hide food in my pillowcase, to make myself small enough that no one would notice when I finally left. But invisibility has a cost. It hollows you out. By the time I aged out of the system, I didn't know who I was beyond a collection of survival instincts and trauma responses. I had no family photos, no childhood memories worth saving, no one to call when life got hard. I was a ghost long before anyone ever called me one. So I enlisted. The military didn't care about my past. It didn't care that I had no family, no connections, no safety net. It only cared whether I could shoot straight, follow orders, and survive. And I did all 3 better than most. I became a combat medic, then a tactical specialist, then someone people whispered about in the barracks. That woman who doesn't flinch. I didn't flinch because I had nothing left to lose, or so I thought. The military gave me something I'd never had: purpose, structure. A place where my scars, both visible and invisible, were badges of honor instead of marks of shame. I excelled in training. I volunteered for the hardest assignments. I became the soldier they sent when missions went sideways and someone needed to drag bleeding bodies out of kill zones. I was good at saving people, maybe because no one had ever saved me. Then I met Alexander. He was a young officer then, ambitious, sharp, and dangerously charming. He wasn't supposed to fall for someone like me, a rough-edged soldier with scars on her knuckles and a wall around her heart. But he did. And I fell harder than I ever thought possible. He told me I was the strongest person he'd ever met. He told me I made him feel safe. And for the first time in my life, I believed I could be more than just a survivor. I could be someone's home. Alexander was different from anyone I'd ever known. He came from privilege, but didn't wear it like armor. He listened when I spoke, remembered details about my past that I barely remembered myself, and never once made me feel like I needed to be anything other than exactly who I was. When he looked at me, I didn't feel invisible. I felt seen. Fully, completely, terrifyingly seen. We married in a small ceremony on a military base. No fanfare, no guests, just him, me, and a chaplain who pronounced us husband and wife beneath a sky streaked with jet trails. I thought that was enough. I thought love was enough. But I was wrong. The first time I met Alexander's mother, she looked at me the way you'd look at a stain on expensive fabric, something that didn't belong and needed to be removed. Her name was Constance Monroe, and she was everything I was not: elegant, educated, connected. She came from old money, the kind that whispered through country clubs and political circles like an inherited secret. And I came from nothing. "You're not what I imagined for my son," she said, her voice cool as frost. I remember standing in her sprawling estate, feeling the weight of crystal chandeliers and oil paintings bearing down on me. The house smelled like old books and furniture polish, every surface gleaming with the kind of perfection that takes generations to achieve. Alexander squeezed my hand, but even his touch couldn't ward off the chill in that room. "She's a soldier, Mother," Alexander said. "She's brave. She's common," Constance interrupted, her eyes never leaving mine. "And you, Alexander, are destined for greatness. Don't let sentiment drag you down." The word common hung in the air like a slap. Common. As if my entire existence could be reduced to a single dismissive adjective. As if the years I'd spent defending this country, the lives I'd saved, the blood I'd shed meant nothing because I didn't summer in the Hamptons or speak fluent French. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell her that I had saved lives, that I had bled for this country, that her son was alive because of people like me. But I said nothing, because deep down, I feared she was right. Maybe I wasn't good enough. Maybe I never would be. Constance made her disapproval clear in 1,000 small ways. She forgot to invite me to family gatherings. She introduced me to her friends as Alexander's companion, with a pause that dripped condescension. She gave us wedding gifts with only Alexander's name on the card. She redecorated the guest room we stayed in during visits, removing any trace of my presence the moment we left. But the worst part? Alexander asked me to be patient, to give her time, to understand that she was just protective of him. I was patient. For years I was patient, and it nearly destroyed me. Despite Constance's disapproval, Alexander and I stayed together. We had 4 children, quadruplets, a miracle the doctors said was 1 in a million. Elra, Mason, Lily, and Theo. 4 perfect souls who made my heart ache with a love I'd never known existed. The pregnancy was brutal. My body, already scarred from combat injuries, struggled to carry 4 babies. I was on bed rest for the last 4 months, swollen and exhausted, watching my husband campaign for his first Senate seat while I counted kicks and prayed they'd all survive. When they were born, 8 weeks early, tiny and fragile, I held all 4 of them in my arms and wept. Not from pain, though there was plenty of that, but from the overwhelming realization that I had created something beautiful, something that couldn't be taken away, something that was mine. Elra came first, screaming her arrival with fierce determination. Mason followed 2 minutes later, quiet and observant even then. Lily tumbled out third, already reaching for her siblings. And Theo, my baby boy, came last. So small the nurses weren't sure he'd make it through the first night. But he did. They all did. And in that moment, holding my 4 miracles, I made a silent vow. I would never let them feel invisible. I would never let them doubt they were loved. I would be the mother I never had. But raising them while Alexander climbed the political ladder wasn't easy. His career demanded everything: late nights, constant travel, public scrutiny, and I became the silent partner, the woman who smiled at fundraisers and stayed quiet when his colleagues joked about the soldier wife. But I wasn't just a soldier wife. I was still active duty for the first 5 years of our marriage. I went on 3 deployments, each one tearing me apart from my babies. I pumped breast milk in war zones, labeling each bag with their names and the date, praying it would reach them before it spoiled. I video called bedtime stories from bunkers, the sound of distant gunfire occasionally interrupting goodnight moon. I came home with nightmares I couldn't share because Alexander was too busy preparing for re-election campaigns. I watched my children grow through pixelated screens and sporadic emails. I missed Elra's first steps, Mason's first word, Lily's first day of preschool, Theo learning to ride a bike. Every milestone was a knife in my chest, but I told myself it was temporary, that my service mattered, that I was protecting their future by fighting for their present. I was lying to myself. Then came the mission that changed everything. It was supposed to be a routine extraction. Get in, get the asset, get out. But intelligence was wrong. We walked into a trap. Explosions, gunfire, chaos. I watched 3 of my teammates fall in the first 60 seconds. Blood sprayed across my face, hot and sticky, and the world narrowed to the sharp clarity of survival. And then I saw him. Alexander. He was there as part of a congressional oversight delegation, inspecting operations in the field. He wasn't supposed to be anywhere near combat, but war doesn't respect boundaries. A sniper had him pinned behind a Humvee, rounds tearing through metal inches from his head. His eyes were wide with terror, his expensive suit already torn and dusty. I didn't think. I ran. I threw myself over him, returning fire, my M4 barking in short, controlled bursts. I dragged him through the dust and smoke while bullets screamed past my ears, my boots slipping in blood. His or mine, I couldn't tell. I felt the impact before I heard it, a round to the shoulder that spun me halfway around. Another grazed my ribs, leaving a burning line across my skin. But I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. I got him to the evac chopper, practically throwing him inside before laying down covering fire for the rest of my team. The pilot was screaming at me to get in, the rotors already spinning up, but I couldn't leave the others behind. I pulled 2 more soldiers into that chopper. Both were critical. Both survived because I stayed. And then I collapsed. The last thing I remembered was Alexander's face above me, his hands pressing against my bleeding shoulder, his voice breaking as he screamed for a medic. Then darkness. They airlifted me to a field hospital, then to a base in Germany, then to Walter Reed. The injuries were severe, but survivable. Shattered collarbone, cracked ribs, significant blood loss. The doctor said I was lucky. That an inch to the left and the bullet would have hit my subclavian artery and I'd have bled out before reaching the chopper. Lucky. I didn't feel lucky. I felt hollowed out, carved empty by adrenaline and exhaustion. But I was alive. I was going home. I was going back to my children. What wasn't survivable was what came next. I was being transferred back to the States when our convoy was hit by a secondary attack. An IED buried in the road, detonated remotely by insurgents who'd been tracking our movements. The Humvee I was in flipped, rolled, and exploded in a ball of fire and twisted metal. I was thrown clear. Later, they'd tell me I was ejected through the windshield. But my head struck a rock with such force that everything went black. When I woke up, I didn't know my name. I didn't know where I was. I didn't know I had a husband, 4 children, or a life waiting for me. The military listed me as missing, presumed dead. My dog tags were found in the wreckage, charred and bent beyond recognition. Alexander was informed. Constance was informed. The children were told their mother wasn't coming home. And Lady Otero? She saw an opportunity. I spent 8 years in a fog. I was found by locals, farmers who pulled me from the wreckage and carried me to a remote clinic, miles from the nearest military base. I had no identification, no memory, no past. I was just Jane, a woman with scars and haunted eyes who flinched at loud noises. The doctor said I had severe traumatic brain injury, that my memories might never return. that the best I could hope for was building a new life from scratch. So that's what I did. I worked odd jobs, cleaning hotel rooms, washing dishes in diners, doing manual labor on construction sites. I lived in a small room above a laundromat, where the smell of detergent and the rhythmic tumble of dryers became the only constant in my life. The owner, an elderly woman named Maria, let me stay there in exchange for helping with the business. At night, I dreamed of faces I couldn't place, voices I couldn't name. Sometimes I woke up crying, reaching for someone who wasn't there. My hands would move on their own, as if remembering how to hold something, or someone, my mind had forgotten. I kept a journal, trying to piece together fragments that surfaced like debris from a shipwreck. A child's laugh, the feel of sand between my toes, the weight of a rifle, the taste of coffee brewed too strong. None of it made sense, but I wrote it all down anyway. Years passed. I became part of the fabric of that small town, the quiet woman who kept to herself, but always helped when someone needed an extra hand. People stopped asking about my past. I stopped trying to remember, but slowly fragments returned. A child's laugh, a man's voice, the feel of a wedding ring I no longer wore. And then, one day, I saw a news broadcast. I was folding laundry in the shop, the TV playing in the background, something Maria always kept on for company. I wasn't really watching, just going through the motions, when the anchor's voice cut through the white noise. Senator Alexander Monroe, newly widowed, announces engagement to Lady Victoria Otero in a move that solidifies his political standing ahead of the presidential primaries. I looked up. The screen showed him standing beside a tall, elegant woman with perfect hair and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She wore a dress that probably cost more than I'd made in 3 years. Her hand rested possessively on his arm, her diamond ring catching the light like a weapon. And behind him, 4 children. My children. The moment I saw their faces, everything came crashing back. Elra, Mason, Lily, Theo, my babies. Their names exploded in my mind like grenades, each one triggering an avalanche of memories. Their births, their first cries, the weight of them in my arms, the smell of their hair, the way Elra always needed a nightlight, the way Mason hummed when he concentrated, the way Lily laughed with her whole body, the way Theo grabbed my finger with his tiny hand. I collapsed to my knees, gasping, sobbing, clawing at the floor. The memories flooded in, like a dam breaking. Our wedding, their births, the deployments, the ambush, the explosion, all of it. Every moment I'd lost came rushing back in a torrent of sensation and emotion so overwhelming, I thought I might drown. Maria found me there, curled on the floor, shaking. Jane, what's wrong? My name isn't Jane, I choked out, my voice raw. It's Amber Monroe. I looked up at the television, where Alexander and Lady Otero were smiling for cameras, my children standing like props behind them. And I'm going home. Getting back to Washington, D.C. wasn't easy. I had no money, no identification, and no proof I was who I said I was. The military had declared me dead. My bank accounts were closed, my social security number flagged as belonging to a deceased person. I was a ghost in every legal sense, but I had something more valuable. Rage. Pure, focused, unrelenting rage. And I had Maria, who believed me when no one else would. She gave me money for a bus ticket. She helped me find a lawyer through a veterans advocacy group. She sat with me through panic attacks when the memories became too much. She became the mother I'd never had, and I will never forget her kindness. The bus ride took 3 days. I sat by the window, watching America scroll past. Small towns and cities, farmland and forests, the landscape of a country I'd bled for but barely recognized. I rehearsed what I'd say 1,000 times, practiced keeping my voice steady, tried to imagine my children's faces when they saw me. Would they remember me? Would they even recognize me? I looked different, older, harder. My hair had streaks of gray I didn't remember earning. My hands were rough from manual labor. My body bore scars, both old and new, that told stories I couldn't speak aloud. But I was still their mother, and nothing, not amnesia, not death certificates, not Lady fucking Otero, was going to keep me from them. When I reached DC, I went straight to the Department of Defense. I demanded to speak to someone in personnel. They tried to turn me away. A homeless-looking woman claiming to be a dead soldier wasn't exactly their top priority. But I didn't leave. I sat in that waiting room for 6 hours until a young officer, barely older than I'd been when I enlisted, finally agreed to hear me out. I told him everything: the ambush, the explosion, the memory loss, the 8 years of darkness. He looked skeptical until I recited my service number from memory, then my unit designation, then the names of every soldier who died in that ambush. "Wait here," he said, his face pale. 2 hours later, they ran my fingerprints, then my DNA. They pulled my service records, my medical files, my personnel photos, and when the results came back, the room went silent. Amber Monroe, alive. The young officer stared at me like I was a ghost. "Ma'am," he said, his voice shaking, "we need to call the Pentagon. This is going to make national news." I leaned forward. "Good," I said. "Let it." The news broke like wildfire. Fallen soldier returns from the dead. Senator's wife alive after 8 years. Miracle or cover-up? Headlines screamed across every network, every website, every social media platform. Alexander's office was flooded with calls. The engagement to Lady Otero was suddenly, publicly, very complicated. Political analysts speculated, conspiracy theorists spun wild tales, and the American public, they were riveted. But I didn't care about headlines or speculation. I cared about my children. The Pentagon arranged a press conference. They wanted to control the narrative, to spin my return as a feel-good military story. They dressed me in a clean uniform, gave me talking points, told me to smile and thank God and the American people for their support. I did none of those things. Instead, when the cameras turned on and a dozen microphones were shoved in my face, I spoke the truth. "My name is Amber Monroe," I began, my voice steady despite the tremors in my hands. 8 years ago, I saved my husband's life in combat. I was injured in the line of duty, suffered traumatic brain injury, and was listed as dead. But I wasn't dead. I was lost. And while I was lost, my family moved on without me. The reporters leaned in, sensing something bigger than the military's sanitized story. "I'm not here for sympathy," I continued. "I'm here to reclaim my life. I'm here to see my children, and I'm here to tell anyone who thinks they can erase me that they're wrong." The press conference erupted in questions. "Do you blame Senator Monroe? What do you think about his engagement? Will you fight for custody?" I looked directly into the camera. "I will fight for everything that's mine." Lady Otero's response came within hours, a carefully worded statement expressing surprise and compassion for my ordeal, but noting that the children have adjusted to their new family dynamic and any disruption could be psychologically harmful. It was a chess move, and I was ready to play. Lady Otero didn't waste time. Within 72 hours, she convened an emergency session of the State Council, a shadowy network of political elites who controlled everything behind the scenes. Billionaires, lobbyists, old money dynasties who treated democracy like a private club. They wanted Alexander married to her. They wanted me gone. The hearing was held in a cold marble chamber that smelled like power and old wood. They accused me of being mentally unfit. They cited my memory loss, my years of absence, my unstable return. They argued that the children needed stability, not a traumatized stranger. Lady Otero sat at the head of the table, her hands folded, her expression serene. She wore pearls and a cream-colored suit that probably cost more than my annual salary. Everything about her screamed refinement, control, legitimacy. Everything about me screamed chaos. My uniform was wrinkled from travel. My hair needed cutting. My hands still bore calluses from years of manual labor. I looked like exactly what I was, a survivor clawing her way back from nothing. "Miss Amber," Lady Otero began, her voice dripping with false sympathy, "we understand you've been through a great deal, but surely you can see that the children have moved on. They have a new life, a new mother figure. Forcing yourself back into their world would only cause them pain." I stared at her, my hands shaking with barely contained fury. "I'm not Miss Amber," I said quietly. "I'm their mother." She smiled, a cold, reptilian expression. A title, perhaps, but motherhood is more than biology. It's presence, and you, my dear, were absent for 8 years. The room murmured in agreement. Heads nodded. One council member, an elderly man with a face like a vulture, actually smiled. "The law is quite clear," Lady Otero continued. "Parental rights can be terminated for abandonment. You abandoned your children." "I was in a coma," I shot back, my voice rising. "Were you?" she purred. "Or were you simply living another life? After all, you managed to work, to survive. One could argue you chose not to return." The accusation hung in the air like poison gas. I wanted to scream. I wanted to flip the table. I wanted to tear her perfectly coiffed hair out by the roots. But instead, I did something better. I pulled out a folder. Inside that folder was everything they didn't want me to have. Medical records proving my injuries and memory loss were service-related. Witness statements from soldiers who saw me save Alexander's life. A journal, battered, blood-stained, that a fellow soldier had kept during our deployment, documenting every mission, every sacrifice, every moment I'd put my life on the line. And most damning of all, a letter. A letter Alexander had written to me while I was in the hospital, before the accident. A letter that said, "If anything happens to you, I will wait forever. You are my home. You are my entire world. Nothing, no career, no position, no amount of power will ever replace you." I slid the letter across the table. Lady Otero's smile faltered. "This," I said, my voice steady now, "is proof that I was not forgotten. I was erased, and not by fate, by people who wanted me gone." I turned to the council, making eye contact with each member. "You want to talk about fitness? Let's talk about the fact that I served this country for 15 years. Let's talk about the fact that I saved the life of the man you're trying to marry off like a business transaction. And let's talk about the fact that my children, have been lied to for 8 years." I pulled out another document. The military investigation into my disappearance. A report that had been classified, buried, hidden from public view. "Did you know," I said slowly, "that there were 3 other soldiers in that convoy who survived the explosion? Did you know they reported seeing me alive, conscious, and calling for help? And did you know that their reports were suppressed?" The room fell silent. "Someone wanted me dead," I continued. "Someone wanted me gone so badly that they buried evidence, manipulated records, and let a combat veteran disappear without proper investigation. So before you sit there and question my fitness as a mother, maybe you should question who benefits from my absence." Every eye in the room turned to Lady Otero. Her face remained impassive, But I saw it, the tiniest flicker of fear. Constance Monroe, sitting in the back, stood up. "She's right," Constance said, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. Every head turned. "I was wrong," Constance continued, her voice thick with emotion. "I was wrong about Amber from the beginning. I tried to keep her away from my son because I thought she wasn't good enough, because I thought a soldier couldn't understand our world of politics and power. But she saved his life. She gave me 4 grandchildren, and when she disappeared, I mourned her like the daughter I never had the courage to accept." She walked forward, her heels clicking on the marble floor with military precision, until she stood beside me. "If you take her children away," Constance said, her voice dropping to a lethal whisper, "you'll have to go through me first. And I promise you, I have more power in this city than all of you combined. I've been playing this game since before most of you were born. And if you think I'll stand by and watch you destroy my family, you're gravely mistaken." The council shifted uncomfortably. Lady Otero's face twisted with barely suppressed fury, but the tide was turning. One council member, a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair, stood up. "I move to dismiss these proceedings," she said firmly. "This is a family matter, not a political one. And frankly, I'm disgusted that we're even having this conversation." Another stood, then another. Within minutes, half the council had walked out. Lady Otero sat alone at the head of the table, her empire crumbling around her. I gathered my documents, looked her dead in the eye, and said, "I told you. You can't erase me." Then I walked out. While the adults fought in boardrooms, my children were waging their own war. Elra, my oldest by 3 minutes, was brilliant. She had her father's strategic mind and my stubbornness. Mason was quieter, observant, the one who saw things no one else did. Lily was fire, loud, passionate, unafraid. And Theo, my baby boy, had a heart too big for his small body. They'd been told I was dead. They'd been told Lady Otero was their new mother. But children, especially mine, don't believe lies easily. Elra had started digging the moment she heard I was alive. She'd found old photos hidden in the attic, pictures of me holding them as babies, laughing with Alexander, wearing my uniform covered in medals. She'd found letters I'd written to Alexander from deployment, letters he'd kept locked in a safe in his study. And she'd found the password to that safe, my birthday. The 4 of them broke into Alexander's office one night, past security, past staff. They were kids, so no one suspected. They looked like they were playing, like they were just exploring their father's workplace. But they were hunting. They downloaded everything: photos, videos, documents, proof that I had existed, that I had loved them, that I had never stopped being their mother. And then they did something extraordinary. They went live. Elra set up a phone in Alexander's office and started a live stream on his official social media account. Within minutes, thousands were watching. Then tens of thousands. Then millions. "My name is Elra Monroe," she said, her voice shaking but steady, her 11-year-old face staring defiantly into the camera. "And I need to tell you the truth about what's happening to my family." She held up a photo of me in uniform, holding all 4 of them as newborns, their tiny bodies barely filling my arms. "This is my mother. Her name is Amber Monroe. She's a war hero. She saved my father's life. She served our country for 15 years. And she's alive." Mason stepped forward, his quiet voice somehow carrying more weight than shouting ever could. "They told us she was dead. They told us to forget her. But you can't forget your own mother. We remember. We remember her voice singing us to sleep. We remember her hands braiding Lily's hair. We remember her reading to us every night before deployment. We remember everything." Lily wiped her eyes, her voice breaking with raw emotion. Lady Otero isn't our mother. She's just someone who wants to be. She tells us to call her mom, but it feels wrong, like lying, like betraying someone who would never betray us. Theo, the youngest at 9 years old, looked directly at the camera with eyes that were heartbreakingly like mine. Mommy, if you're out there, please come home. We miss you. We miss you so much it hurts. And we're sorry. We're sorry we couldn't protect you. We're sorry we couldn't stop them from forgetting you. His voice cracked, and his siblings moved closer, wrapping their arms around him. Elra looked back at the camera, tears streaming down her face. They're trying to take her away from us again. The state council, Lady Otero, all these powerful people who don't even know us. They're trying to decide if our mother is good enough. But she is. She's always been good enough. She's a hero, and we need her. The comments exploded. Bring Amber home. Chapter Justice for Amber. Children need their mother. I stand with Amber. The video was shared 50 million times in 24 hours. It trended worldwide. Celebrities reposted it. Veterans groups rallied. Mothers across America wept watching it. And the state council? They had no choice but to respond. The council called an emergency session. This time, it was public. Every major news network was there. The room was packed with cameras, reporters, and protesters holding signs that read, "Don't steal our mother. Amber saved our senator, and love trumps politics." The chamber was so crowded that security had to set up overflow rooms with video feeds. Outside, thousands more gathered, chanting my name. They demanded Alexander make a choice. Marry Lady Otero, secure political power, maintain the status quo, and move forward with the life he'd built in my absence. Or stand by me, risk everything, and fight for the truth. Alexander stood at the podium, his face pale, his hands trembling as they gripped the edges. He looked like a man standing on the edge of a cliff, and indeed he was. His entire political career balanced on what he said next. Lady Otero sat beside him, her smile confident, her hand reaching for his in a gesture of ownership. And then he spoke. 8 years ago, he said, his voice hoarse with emotion, I lost the love of my life. I thought she was gone forever. I mourned her. I tried to move on. I tried to be a good father, a good senator, a good man. But you can't move on from someone who was your entire world. He paused, his eyes finding me in the crowd. Amber wasn't just my wife. She was my partner, my protector, my best friend. She saved my life in combat. She gave me 4 incredible children. She sacrificed everything, her career, her body, her very identity, for our family. He pulled out a piece of paper from his jacket. The marriage contract with Lady Otero. And in front of everyone, in front of the council, the cameras, the nation, he tore it in half. The crowd erupted. No one, he said, his voice rising above the chaos, can replace the woman who gave me everything, who saved my life, who gave me my children. And if you think I'm going to stand here and let you erase her, let you pretend she didn't matter, that she doesn't deserve to come home, you're wrong. Lady Otero shot to her feet, her face contorted with rage, all pretense of elegance gone. You're making a mistake, she screamed. You'll lose everything, your career, your reputation, your political future, all of it. Alexander looked her dead in the eye. The only mistake I made was listening to people like you. People who think power matters more than love, who think politics matters more than family. I've spent 8 years living a lie, and I won't do it anymore. He turned to the cameras. Amber, if you're watching, come home, please. The kids need you. I need you. We all need you. And then the doors burst open. My 4 children ran into the chamber, their small feet pounding on marble, their voices crying out in unison. They ran past security, past the barricades, past every adult who tried to stop them, and they fell to their knees in front of the council. "Please," Elra sobbed, her voice echoing through the chamber. "Please don't take our mother away again. Please." Mason's voice cracked with desperation. "We already lost her once. We can't lose her again." Lily clung to her brothers, her whole body shaking. "We'll be good. We promise. We'll do whatever you want. Just please, please let us have our mom back." Theo looked up at the council, tears streaming down his face, and said words that shattered every heart in that room. "She's our mommy, and we love her. Don't you understand? We love her." The entire nation watched through tears. News anchors choked up on live television. Hardened politicians wiped their eyes, and every single person in that room knew the war was over. I had won. But I wasn't in that room yet. I was standing outside the chamber doors, listening to my children beg for me, and I realized something profound. I didn't need the council's approval. I didn't need Lady Otero's defeat. I didn't need Alexander's speech. I just needed to walk through those doors. So I did. The doors opened slowly, every creak echoing through the suddenly silent chamber. Every head turned. Every camera swung in my direction. The world held its breath. I walked slowly, deliberately, down the center aisle. My boots, still the same military-issue ones I'd worn a decade ago, echoed on the marble floor like a drumbeat, like a heartbeat, like a war march. I didn't look at Lady Otero. I didn't look at the council. I didn't look at Alexander. I looked only at my children. Elra saw me first. Her eyes went wide, her mouth forming a silent, "Mom?" as if she couldn't believe I was real. Then Mason noticed, his quiet gasp carrying more weight than any scream. Then Lily, whose entire face transformed from despair to hope in an instant. Then Theo, who simply whispered, "Mommy," like a prayer. They scrambled to their feet and ran, and when they collided with me, when their arms wrapped around my waist and their tears soaked into my shirt, when their weight, so much heavier than I remembered, they'd grown so much, pressed against me, I finally felt whole again. "I'm here," I whispered, my voice breaking as I sank to my knees to hold them properly. "I'm here, and I'm never leaving you again. Never. I promise. I swear. I'm here." Elra pressed her face into my shoulder. "I thought you'd never come. I thought—" "I know, baby. I know. But I'm here now." Mason gripped my hand so tightly his knuckles went white. "Don't go. Please don't go." "Never again," I promised. Lily was crying so hard she couldn't speak, just holding on to me like I might disappear if she let go. And Theo looked up at me with those enormous eyes and said, "I told them you'd come back. I told them." "You were right," I said, kissing his forehead. "You were always right." Alexander stood frozen at the podium, his face a storm of guilt, relief, and love so profound it radiated from him like heat. He came down from the platform, walking past the council, past Lady Otero, past everyone who had tried to keep us apart. And when he reached me, still on my knees surrounded by our children, he dropped down beside us. "I'm sorry," he choked out, tears streaming down his face. "I'm so sorry. I should have kept looking. You did everything you could," I interrupted, reaching up to touch his cheek. "We both did. We both survived, and we're still here. That's what matters." He shook his head. "I let them push you out. I let Otero—" "You were grieving," I said firmly. "You were trying to be a father. You did the best you could with what you thought was true. I don't blame you, Alexander. I never did." He pulled me into his arms. The children pressed between us, and we stayed there, a family reunited in the center of a political circus. But we didn't care. Let them watch. Let the cameras roll. Let the world see that love, real love, doesn't die just because the world declares it dead. The council tried to regain control. The chairman banged his gavel, his face red with frustration. "This hearing is not over." "Yes," Constance Monroe said, stepping forward with the authority of a woman who had spent 50 years commanding rooms like this. "It is." She looked at me, then at her grandchildren clinging to my sides, and her voice was iron-wrapped in velvet. "If any of you try to separate this family again, I will personally dismantle every career in this room. I will expose every secret, every backroom deal, every skeleton you've all worked so hard to bury. Amber Monroe is my daughter, not by law, but by choice. These children are my grandchildren. And if you think you can legislate love, if you think you can bureaucratize motherhood, you're fools." She swept her gaze across the council members, and several of them actually flinched. "Motion to dismiss all proceedings against Mrs. Monroe," called out the steel-haired woman who'd spoken up before. "Seconded," came another voice. "All in favor?" A chorus of ayes filled the chamber. The chairman, defeated, slammed his gavel one final time. "This hearing is dismissed." The room erupted in applause, not from the council, but from the gallery, from the press, from the people who had been watching this nightmare unfold and finally saw justice. And Lady Otero? She sat motionless, her mask finally cracking, revealing the fury and humiliation beneath. Her perfectly manicured hands clenched into fists, her jaw tightened, and then, without a word, she stood and walked out, her heels clicking in angry rhythm against marble. She was not done. Not yet. But for that moment, I didn't care. I was home. But villains rarely go quietly. 2 weeks later, Lady Otero held a gala, a lavish, star-studded affair meant to salvage her reputation. She invited senators, celebrities, donors, media moguls, everyone who mattered in Washington society. And she invited me, not as a guest, as a spectacle. "I think it's important," she told the press, her smile sharp as glass, "that we show forgiveness and unity. After all, Amber has been through so much. It would be cruel to exclude her now that she's back." The way she said back dripped with condescension, as if my return was an inconvenience she was graciously tolerating. It was a trap. A public stage where she could humiliate me in front of cameras, prove I didn't belong in her world of silk gowns and champagne fountains, show everyone that I was exactly what Constance had once called me, common. But I went anyway. I wore my military dress uniform, crisp, pressed to perfection, decorated with medals I'd earned in blood and fire. The Silver Star, the Bronze Star, the Purple Heart with 2 oak leaf clusters. Each ribbon told a story of sacrifice, of courage, of a life spent serving something greater than myself. I walked into that ballroom with my head high, my children flanking me like a small army, Elra in a simple navy dress, Mason and Theo in matching suits, Lily with her hair braided exactly the way I used to do it before deployments. Alexander's hand was steady in mine, his own military medals gleaming on his chest. And Constance walked on my other side, regal and fierce, daring anyone to question my presence. The room went silent when we entered. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Champagne glasses paused halfway to lips. Even the string quartet faltered for half a measure. Lady Otero stood at the center of it all, resplendent in a gown that probably cost more than most people's cars, surrounded by her circle of equally polished allies. Her smile froze when she saw me. "Amber," she said, her voice honeyed venom, loud enough to carry across the room. How unexpected. I didn't think you'd come. This isn't exactly your usual environment. The implication was clear. This is my world, not yours. You invited me, I said evenly, meeting her eyes without flinching, and I've never been one to turn down a fight. Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. She laughed too, a brittle, hollow sound like ice cracking. This isn't a battlefield, dear. This is civilization, society, things you, well, things you might not be familiar with. The insult landed exactly as she intended. Several of her friends tittered behind their hands. Funny, I replied, my voice calm but carrying edge. Because I've found that battlefields are often more honest than ballrooms. At least in war, people are upfront about trying to destroy you. The room went very still. Lady Otero's smile sharpened. Tell me, Amber, do you think a uniform makes you belong here? Do you think surviving makes you special? Because the truth is, you're just a ghost. A sad little ghost clinging to a life that moved on without you. The world kept spinning while you were wherever you were. And now you expect everyone to just pretend the last 8 years didn't happen? She took a step closer, her perfume cloying and expensive. These people? These are the ones who actually matter. They're the ones who shape policy, who move markets, who decide elections. You're a footnote. A tragic footnote, perhaps, but a footnote nonetheless. The room held its breath, waiting to see if I'd crumble. I stepped closer instead. You're right, I said softly, but everyone heard me. I am a ghost. But here's the thing about ghosts, Victoria. They haunt the people who wronged them. And you, Lady Otero, have been haunted by me since the day I returned. I smiled, and it was not kind. Every time you look at Alexander, you see me. Every time you see my children, you see me. Every time you attend a state council meeting, you see me. And no matter how many galas you throw or how many fake smiles you wear, you'll never erase the fact that I came back from the dead to reclaim everything you tried to steal. Her hand trembled, champagne sloshing in her glass. You're nothing, she hissed. You're a broken soldier with PTSD and a hero complex. You think you've won. You think the public's sympathy will last? In 6 months, they'll have forgotten you. But I'll still be here. I'll still have power. And you'll still be common. No, I said quietly. I'm everything you're not. I'm a mother who would die for her children. I'm a soldier who saved lives instead of taking them. I'm someone who loves without conditions or contracts. And that, Victoria, terrifies you. Because you know that all your money, all your connections, all your power can't buy what I have. And what's that? She sneered. A family that actually wants me. Before she could respond, Elra stepped forward, phone in hand. Actually, Elra said loudly, her voice clear and fearless. Everyone should know something. She held up her phone, tapping the screen. Lady Otero's voice, unmistakable, crystal clear, filled the ballroom through the gala's sound system. If Amber Monroe ever comes back, we'll make sure she's declared unfit. No one will believe a traumatized soldier over us. We control the narrative. We control the council. Hell, we practically control Alexander. The man's been so broken since she died that he'll believe whatever we tell him. Another voice, one of the council members, responded, And the children? They're young, they'll forget her. Children are resilient. We'll tell them she abandoned them, that she chose to stay away. Eventually, they'll believe it, and by the time they're grown, I'll be the only mother they remember. The ballroom exploded. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions. Donors backed away from Lady Otero like she carried plague. Her face went white, then red, then purple. That That's out of context. No, Constance Monroe said, stepping forward with the devastating calm of a woman delivering a killing blow. That's exactly in context. You conspired to destroy a mother. You manipulated my son. You tried to steal my grandchildren. And now, Victoria, you're done. She gestured to security. Escort her out. She's no longer welcome at any event I host, fund, or attend. And trust me, darling, Constance added with a cold smile. That's most of them. Security approached. Lady Otero backed away, her composure finally completely shattered. You'll regret this, she screamed as they took her arms. All of you. I have friends. I have power. You have nothing, I said quietly. And you never did. Power isn't something you take. It's something people give you. And the moment they see who you really are, it evaporates. As security escorted her toward the exit, she twisted in their grip to look back at me, her face twisted with pure hatred. This isn't over, she spat. I smiled. Yes, it is. And as the doors closed behind her, cutting off her protests, the ballroom erupted in applause, not for the drama, for justice. But fate wasn't done testing me. As the gala descended into chaos, reporters swarming, guests gossiping, Lady Otero's allies scrambling to distance themselves, a deafening crack split the air. Everyone looked up. The chandelier, a massive crystal monstrosity that had hung in this ballroom for a century, was breaking free from its moorings. Years of neglect, of cosmetic fixes instead of proper maintenance, had weakened the supports. It plummeted toward the crowd like a falling star made of glass and death. Toward Constance. Time slowed in the way it does in combat. I saw the trajectory, calculated the angle, knew exactly where it would land. I didn't think. I dove. I tackled Constance, wrapping my arms around her and rolling us both across the floor as the chandelier crashed where she'd stood seconds before. Glass exploded like shrapnel. Metal shrieked. People screamed. Debris rained down, crystals, chains, fragments of gilded metal. I felt something sharp slice across my shoulder blade. Another piece tore through my sleeve, but I kept my body over Constance's, shielding her until the chaos stopped. The ballroom went silent except for the tinkling of settling glass. I lay on top of Constance, my breath ragged, blood seeping from a dozen small cuts. You, she gasped, staring at me with wide eyes. You saved me. Yeah, I said, wincing as I helped her up. That's kind of my thing. She stared at me for a long moment, her perfectly styled hair disheveled, her expensive dress torn, her usual composure completely gone. Tears welled in her eyes. Why? She whispered. After everything I did to you, after how I treated you. Because you're family, I said simply. And family protects each other, even when they've hurt us, even when it's hard, even when... I didn't get to finish. She pulled me into her arms and held me so tightly I could barely breathe. I'm sorry, she whispered, her voice breaking. I'm so sorry. For everything. For doubting you. For pushing you away. For making you feel like you weren't good enough. You were always good enough. You were always more than good enough. I was just too proud to see it. She pulled back, her hands on my shoulders, tears streaming down her face. You're my daughter, she said firmly, her voice thick with emotion. Not by law, not by marriage, by choice. You're my daughter, Amber, and I'm proud of you. I'm so incredibly proud of everything you are. And for the first time since I'd returned, maybe for the first time since I'd met her, I felt like I truly had come home. Not to a house, not to a city, to a family that finally, completely chose me back. The fallout from the gala was swift and merciless. The audio recording Elra had released went viral. Within 24 hours, it had been shared over 100 million times. Hashtags trended worldwide. Otero exposed. Mothers speak out. Amber was right. Investigative journalists, smelling blood in the water, dug deeper. They uncovered years of corruption, manipulation, and abuse of power within the state council. Backroom deals, bribes disguised as campaign contributions, the systematic silencing of anyone who threatened their control. Lady Otero became the symbol of everything rotten in the system. Her face appeared on magazine covers with headlines like "The Woman Who Tried to Steal a Mother" and "Power, Politics, and the Plot Against Amber Monroe." Several council members resigned before they could be forced out. Others were indicted on various charges: fraud, corruption, conspiracy. The entire power structure that had tried to erase me crumbled like a house of cards. And Lady Otero? She disappeared from public life, her name now synonymous with scandal. Last I heard, she'd moved to Europe, trying to reinvent herself where no one knew her story. But the internet never forgets. And the nation? They rallied behind me in ways I never expected. Amber Monroe trended for weeks. My face appeared on murals in cities across America. Veterans groups held rallies in my honor. Women's organizations used my story as a rallying cry for mothers' rights. I received thousands of letters, from soldiers, from mothers, from women who'd been dismissed and erased and told they didn't matter. Each one told a story similar to mine. Each one ended with the same message: thank you for not staying silent. I became a symbol, not because I wanted to, but because I refused to disappear. And somehow, in becoming a symbol, I became myself again. The months that followed were not easy. PTSD doesn't disappear because you win. Trauma doesn't evaporate because justice is served. I still woke up screaming sometimes, trapped in nightmares where I was back in the explosion, back in those lost 8 years, back in the moment I saw my children and they didn't recognize me. Alexander held me through those nights. So did my kids, piling into our bed when they heard me cry out, their small bodies warm and real and present. "We're here, Mom," Elra would whisper. "You're safe." "We're not going anywhere," Mason would add. "We love you," Lily and Theo would chorus. And slowly, painfully slowly, I began to heal. Therapy helped, both for me and for the children who had their own trauma to process. We learned how to talk about our feelings, about our fears, about the years we'd lost. Constance became my unexpected ally in this. She attended family therapy sessions, sitting in the back, but always present, always listening. She apologized not just once, but over and over, in words and in actions, showing up for every school play, every soccer game, every milestone she'd missed while pushing me away. "I can't give you back the years I wasted," she told me one evening, the two of us sitting on her porch watching the sunset. "But I can be here for the years ahead, if you'll let me." "I'd like that," I said. She squeezed my hand. "You're stronger than I ever gave you credit for," she said softly. "Stronger than me, certainly. I don't know if I could have survived what you did." "You would have," I said, "because that's what mothers do. We survive. For them." I gestured toward the house where Alexander was helping the kids with homework, their laughter drifting through open windows. "We survive because giving up isn't an option." Constance nodded, tears in her eyes. "My son is lucky to have you. My grandchildren are lucky to have you. And I'm lucky you forgave me." "You're family," I said simply, "and family forgives." 6 months after the hearing, Alexander and I renewed our vows. We'd never stopped being married legally, but after 8 years apart, after everything we'd been through, We wanted to choose each other again, deliberately, consciously, with full knowledge of exactly what we were promising. The ceremony was held in a small church, the same one where we'd married years ago, back when we were young and naive and thought love alone could conquer anything. Now we knew better. Love wasn't enough. You also needed commitment, communication, the willingness to fight for each other even when everything tried to pull you apart. This time, Constance sat in the front row, tears streaming down her face, pride radiating from every line of her body. This time, my children stood beside me, Elra as my maid of honor, the boys as groomsmen, Lily holding the rings with reverent care. This time, there were no cameras, no politics, no schemes, just family, friends, and the people who'd stood by us when the world tried to tear us apart. Alexander took my hands, his voice steady but thick with emotion. 8 years ago, I thought I'd lost you forever, he began. And in many ways, I did lose you. Not to death, but to circumstances neither of us could control. I grieved you. I tried to move on. I tried to be the man you would have wanted me to be. He paused, his thumbs rubbing gentle circles on the backs of my hands. But you came back. Against impossible odds, you fought your way back to us. You protected our children. You protected my mother. You protected me, even when I didn't deserve it. And now I'm standing here, getting a second chance that most people never get. His voice broke slightly. So, I'm making you a promise, Amber. From this day forward, I will protect you. I will stand beside you, not in front of you, not behind you, but beside you as your equal partner. I will never let anyone make you feel invisible again. I will fight for you the way you've always fought for me. And I will love you, not despite your scars, but because they're proof of how hard you fought to come home. Tears streamed down my face. When it was my turn, I took a shaky breath. I don't need protecting, I said, my voice strong despite the tears. But I'll take the partnership. The church erupted in gentle laughter. Alexander, you gave me something I'd never had before. A home. Not a house. I'd lived in plenty of those. But a home. A place where I belonged. Where I was chosen. Where I mattered. I squeezed his hands. And when I lost my memories, when I lost myself, the love you gave me was what pulled me back. Even when I didn't remember your face, I remembered the feeling, the certainty that somewhere, someone was waiting for me. Someone needed me. Someone loved me. My voice dropped to a whisper. I'm not the same woman I was 8 years ago. I'm harder, more scarred, less naive, but I'm also stronger. And I'm standing here today not because I need you to complete me, but because I choose you. I choose this family. I choose this life. Every single day, I choose you. He kissed me before the officiant even gave permission, and the church erupted in applause. When we walked down the aisle, hand in hand, my children rushed forward and wrapped their arms around us. We stood there, a messy, imperfect, beautiful family, while cameras flashed and people cheered. And I realized something profound. I had survived not just war, not just amnesia, not just political conspiracy. I had survived being erased, and I had come back stronger. 6 months after the wedding, I stood at a podium in front of the Capitol building. A crowd of thousands stretched before me. Mothers, soldiers, survivors, people who'd been dismissed and erased and told they didn't matter. They held signs with my name, with their own stories, with messages of solidarity and strength. The National Mall had never seen anything quite like it. Not a protest exactly, more like a reckoning, a collective declaration that invisibility was no longer acceptable. I cleared my throat, my voice amplified across the vast space by speakers that carried my words to every corner. My name is Amber Monroe, I began, my hands gripping the podium to steady myself. And I'm here to tell you that you are not invisible. The crowd roared, a sound like thunder rolling across the mall. I was told I didn't matter, that I was replaceable, that I should disappear quietly and let others decide my worth. I was erased, not just from memory, but from official records, from family photos, from the very story of my own life. I paused, letting the words settle. But I didn't stay erased, and neither should you. I held up a photo, the one from the gala, where I stood in my uniform surrounded by my family, medals gleaming, head held high. This is who I am, a mother, a soldier, a survivor. And no one gets to erase that. Not Lady Otero, not the state council, not anyone who thinks power gives them the right to decide who matters and who doesn't. Tears streamed down faces in the crowd. People held up their own photos, their own stories of survival. If you've ever been told you're too damaged, too old, too broken, too much, know this: you are stronger than the people who tried to silence you. You are braver than the systems that failed you. And you are loved, even when the world forgets. The applause was deafening, rolling across the mall in waves. I looked directly at the cameras broadcasting this moment to millions. So to every mother watching, every woman who's been dismissed, every person who's been told they don't belong, this is your permission to fight back, to reclaim your name, to take up space, to refuse to be erased. I smiled, and it was fierce and proud and unbreakable. Because ghosts can haunt, but survivors rebuild the world. The crowd chanted my name, but it wasn't about me anymore. It was about all of us, every person who'd been told to stay quiet and decided to speak instead. As I stepped down from that podium, my children rushed forward. Alexander was right behind them, and Constance too, all of us coming together in a tight embrace while thousands cheered. Elra whispered in my ear, "We're proud of you, Mom." Mason squeezed my hand tight enough to hurt, but I didn't mind. Lily kissed my cheek, leaving a lipstick mark I wouldn't wipe off for hours. And Theo looked up at me with those wide, trusting eyes and said, "You're a superhero." I laughed, tears spilling over. "No, baby, I'm just your mom." But as I looked out at the thousands of faces, at the signs that read "Dash I Am Amber" and "Mothers Rise Up" and "Never Invisible," I realized something. Maybe I was both. Maybe we all were. Because every mother who keeps going when everything tells her to quit is a superhero. Every woman who stands up after being knocked down is a warrior. Every person who refuses to be erased is a revolution. And together we were unstoppable. So let me ask you something. If the world tried to erase you, if your family, your society, your own reflection in the mirror told you that you didn't matter, would you fight back? Would you stand up, even when your legs were shaking? Would you speak, even when your voice cracked? Would you reclaim the life that was stolen from you? Because here's the truth. You don't need permission to exist. You don't need approval to be a mother, a survivor, a fighter. You don't need anyone's blessing to take up space in your own life. You just need the courage to say, "I'm still here, and I'm not going anywhere." I'm Amber Monroe. I was erased from my own life, my identity stolen by amnesia, my family told I was dead, my existence nearly wiped from history. I came back from nothing. No memory, no money, no proof I was who I said I was. I fought an entire political machine that wanted me gone. And I won. Not because I was special. Not because I was lucky. But because I refused to accept their version of my story. If my story made you feel something, if it made you remember your own strength, your own worth, your own refusal to be diminished, then I'm asking you to do something. Share it. Share it with the mothers who need to hear it. Share it with the women who've been silenced. Share it with the veterans who feel forgotten. Share it with anyone who's ever been told they're too much or not enough or don't belong. Because we do matter. We always have. And we always will. Subscribe to this channel if you believe that dignity doesn't expire with age, that kindness isn't weakness, and that every person's story deserves to be heard. Share this video if you've ever felt invisible and refuse to stay that way. Comment below if you're ready to stop apologizing for taking up space. Because this isn't just my story anymore. It's our story. The story of every person who's been erased and clawed their way back into existence. The story of every mother who's been dismissed and kept fighting anyway. The story of every survivor who refused to let trauma have the final word. And together, our voices are too loud to ignore. Thank you for listening to my story. Now go tell yours.